My name is Hannah Byers. I'm Vice President of the Women's Law Student Association, and I'm in charge of this event this year, along with Emily Cox. And it is our pleasure to have all of you here and to have Ms. Stacey Godfrey Evans here. We're very excited, and we're very excited that you're here. So I'm going to give you a small background on the Edith House, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ms. Evans, and then we will get right to your speech, what you've all been waiting for. The Edith House Lecture Series is a very esteemed lecture series here at UGA because Ms. Edith House was co-valedictorian of her class of 1925. She was the first woman to graduate from University of Georgia Law, and she went on to be Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. This event is held every year in honor of her remarkable achievements and what she's done in her life. And it could not be possible without the family of Edith House, some of which are here with us today, and we are very honored to have all of you here today. It means so much to us. This year, we are particularly pleased to have Ms. Stacey Godfrey Evans here. Ms. Evans was nice enough to come and talk to us. She is a fantastic person, and I've really enjoyed getting to know her even with our email exchanges and just with lunch that we just had. I'm really excited to hear her speak, and all of you should come talk to her afterwards because she's pretty great. Ms. Evans grew up in Georgia. She comes from a really interesting family history because she graduated from high school. And after that, her parents couldn't afford to support her in college, so she earned her way to get into college with the Hope Scholarship and the Pell Grant, which are I don't know if any of you are familiar with them, but they're hard to get. And she graduated from the University of Georgia with a bachelor's degree in economics and political science. Then she went on to graduate from the University of Georgia Law, and she graduated with honors and was also on the Georgia Law Review. She started her legal career at Powell, Goldstein, Franzer, and Murphy, which now became Bryan & Cave. She did securities litigation for 8 years, and now she works taking on healthcare giants and Medicare fraud cases, where she became a partner of the law firm of Wood, Hernacki, and Evans, and now it's called Evans Law. She's given back to the community a great deal, which is one of the reasons that we're excited to have her here today, not just in women's positions of interest to women, which she does have several of those, but she's also given back in many other ways, including trial practice, and she also was honored with many esteemed awards. She's pretty great all around, and she has so many awards. I didn't even know which ones to pick to tell you about, but there's a lot of them. She's an excellent attorney, and that seems to be the resounding idea. She won Best State Elected Official in 2013. She won Teacher, Children, and Colleagues Well Award in 2013, and the Superwoman Award in 2012. She has given back so much. She's accomplished so much. And we're very honored and pleased to have her here, not just because she's alum, but because she's such a great representative of a powerful, accomplished, and very nice woman. And I want you all to join me in giving her a round of applause. She gives the Edith House Lecture.
Thank you, Hannah. The one thing that didn't make it into my bio is that I almost didn't get into school here. I got waitlisted and basically had to beg my way into school and go to summer law school. So I've always dreamed of the day when I could sort of say that. But I appreciate the folks who knew that, who believed in me and thought I could be a good student and that perhaps I would be a good alum as well, and I hope that I've lived up to that. It is an amazing honor for me to be here today, and I want to thank the school in general and to the Women's Law School Student Association in particular, and particularly Hannah. She's been amazing to work with. I really appreciate how easy you made this for me and how you kept me on task to make sure that I was preparing accordingly. You really were a good taskmaster, and I appreciate that very much. I also want to say thank you to Dean Rutledge for facilitating the invitation for me to be here today. And I've told him privately before, but I want to say out loud, or I want to say to him out loud, you're really good at being dean. And I appreciate all the things you've done in the short time to help students and alum immediately, but I also know what a long-term vision that you have for the school, and I'm just excited to watch that unfold. And just so you know, a specific example here, he's already recruiting for the class of 2036. This is Dean Rutledge playing with my daughter Ashley in the fountain, and so he's already made amazing positive associations with the law school for my daughter, and so we'll be looking forward to her coming here. I also want to acknowledge and thank my husband Andrew for being here. We met here, and so it was really nice of him to take time out from his busy law practice to be with me here today and for us to spend some time in Athens, the greatest city on earth, where we met and also where we got married. So it's been really nice to be here today. I see so many friends in the room and so many former professors, which is nice. And my friend, former Congressman Barrow, back there in the back, thank you for being here. I particularly want to thank Professor Love. Sarah Jane Love, she may not remember that she did this, but she's a big part of me getting into politics. I mean, I'd always been interested in politics, but getting me into the real meat of the politics in Atlanta after I graduated from law school, she took me to my very first Georgia WinList event. And for those of you that don't know, WinList stands for Women in Numbers, and it's an organization that helps women who want to run for statewide and legislative offices. And she took me to a candidate unveiling event, maybe when I was a second year. And it was such an amazing room, and it was it was just so much enthusiasm, and it really got me fired up to continue in politics after I left here. And I ended up being on the board with Professor Love as part of that organization, and then ultimately chairing that organization. So just her taking the interest and taking me to Atlanta with her that day was amazing for me. So thank you for being here. It's great to see you. And to have Edith House family here, thank you. It's such an honor for me to even have my name mentioned in the same sentence with such a female legal giant. And there's many reasons to admire Edith House and to be excited about being able to be a lecturer here. But one of those reasons in particular is very simple. It's just that she got it. I mean, she understood how important it was for women to be involved, and she understood that it wasn't going to be just enough for her to graduate from law school, and it wasn't going to be just enough for her and other women to gain admission to the bar, and it wasn't going to be enough for women to just finally get jobs in law firms instead of being content to sit in the typing pool after they got their law degrees, which was what a lot of women did. But she knew we were going to have to keep working for more, and so she gave us the opportunity to have this lecture series, which every year gives us a reminder of where we are and that we need to keep going, and particularly that some reminders for us younger women that we live in her shadow. We live in the shadow of Edith House and other female legal giants who got us here. We owe them so much debt for the doors that they opened for us and the paths that they paved for us. But it's also a sobering reminder as well that there's still a long way for us to go, and it's certainly not a time for us to step back. And although women have made amazing progress, and she would certainly be proud, I hope, of where we are, there's definitely a lot more still to do. So what I'm going to do, and I might go through this a little bit quickly because it's really a review of some stats and marks to just sort of review where we are. Law school admissions, firstly. So women started graduating from law school in 1870, even though law schools had been around for nearly 100 years by that point. So men had a pretty big head start on us. And of course, women started graduating from law school in Georgia in 1911. And our own Edith House, of course, was one of 2 female graduates from this law school in 1925. And the numbers grew from there, but it was pretty slow growth. One of the biggest year-over-year increases was during World War II, when the percentage went all the way from 3 to 12. It was pretty low, but that was one of our biggest increases, and of course that was because the men were off at war. And unfortunately, after the war was over, those numbers went back down. And it really wasn't until the 70s that we started really picking up, and by 1979 we had 32% of enrollees being female. And then since at least 1991, women have made up just under half of law school graduates, our high being 50.4% during the 92-93 school year. And then that percentage went back down a little bit in the 12-13 school year to 47%, which is really good progress. We're pretty much at parity with that number, so I think we can all be pretty proud of that. Now, in the profession, in 1990 and 1991, women made up approximately 22% of the legal profession nationwide, and that's increased now to about 34%. So women are also gaining steadily here in Georgia. Back in 1940, there were only 60 female lawyers. It took us 30 years to quadruple that number to 245, which sounds really good, but that was only 5.6% of attorneys in our state at that time. Then by 2003, we were getting up there a little bit with 30%, and then currently we're about 39% of the state's lawyers. So we're getting closer on entering the profession, but we're certainly not at parity. And it's important to remember that the number of women who are graduating law school is closer to 47%. So obviously, a good number of us are not making it into the profession, and so we certainly still have some work to do. So women lawyer voices got us there, got us to those admission numbers in law schools, getting us there in the profession, which is nice. So the number of law school graduates, good. The number of attorneys, pretty good. But as I move to the next set of numbers, I'm not able to continue with the good news because our place within the profession is not so good. Women are still very underrepresented in leadership roles, both in the profession, in government, and in business. And this makes long-term societal change very hard. It isn't just enough for women to be lawyers. We need to be leading lawyers, and we need to be lawyers who are leaders. The National Association of Women Lawyers conducted a survey last year of the 200 largest law firms, and the results are not good. So you'll see here on this slide, female associate numbers are pretty good, 44%, getting close to parity there, but the percentage of partners, both non-equity and equity, are terrible. 28% female non-equity partners, 18% equity partners. So that means that while females are holding their own in the associate ranks, we're not advancing at the same rate that men are by a lot. I mean, you can see there the difference, 44, 64. Those are huge differences. Now, sometimes numbers like this will get explained away by folks saying, well, women are just opting to go of counsel, or women are opting to go in-house. Well, that does not explain these numbers. If you look at the next slide, you'll see that same survey found that of counsel, the percentage of females that were of counsel was only 34%, and only 21% of in-house counsel at Fortune 500 companies were female, the GCs. So that's not what's happening. And the worst part about this, I don't have a slide on it, but the worst part about the survey that Now did is that it found that the number of female equity partners has barely increased at all in the last 10 years. And I saw on my way over here, there are new numbers out. Georgia Law 360 just put out some new numbers and found the same thing. We're still flatlining. And in fact, if we continue at the pace that we're at right now, women equity partners will not reach even 30% until the year 2181. That's 165 years from now. I checked the math to make sure I was right about that. As y'all all know, nobody in this room is good at math, so I had to make sure that I was right. So no one in this room is going to be around 165 years, and that's not even to get to parity. That's to get to 30%. That is not good. In the judiciary, women are also still playing second fiddle to men. 35% of federal appellate court judges are women. Only 33% of federal district court judges are women. Women hold only 30% of state judgeships nationally, and here in Georgia, that number is 31%. But by the end of 2010, 51% of all federal, state, and local judicial clerks were women, which is nice. Certainly good to be in the room to influence court decisions, but I would much rather us be at parity in making those decisions and not simply influencing those decisions. Turning to the political side, it's even worse. Women comprise only 19% of congressional seats. None of the congressional seats that Georgia has, none of the 14 are held by a woman. So even though women are 51% of the electorate nationwide, we are settling for less than 1/5 of the seats in Congress. This makes us 98th in the world when it comes to women serving in national legislatures. We are behind Kenya, we're behind Indonesia, and we're barely ahead of the United Arab Emirates. Certainly not stellar information. We've yet to have a female president. I couldn't resist yet. Sorry. I'll try not to do that anymore. This is true even though 45 other countries have elected a female leader, and many of them have done it more than once. A lot of them have done it more than 3 or 4 times. Women hold 24% of the seats in state legislatures across the country. Here in Georgia, in the state house where I serve, 26% of us are women, and in the state senate, there are only 16% women. Up until a special election last year, there was only one female Republican senator, and she had been the only female Republican senator for a really, 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 really long time. She may be the only one. I'm not sure that I'm right about that historically, but she was so giddy when there was another Republican woman elected to the Senate. She had a party for her, actually, because it was such an anomaly. And, we're happy that she's there, but that shouldn't be party worthy, unfortunately. At the rate that we're moving, the Georgia state legislature is projected to reach gender parity 50 years from now, in the year 2066, which is actually the soonest that any state in the South is projected to reach parity. But like I said, that's 50 years from now. I'm going to be 88. Most of the students in this room, y'all are going to be in your 70s. My 4-year-old daughter is going to be 54. That is just really not fast enough at all. I mean, it really shouldn't be controversial or a dream for me to be able to look at my 4-year-old daughter and tell her, as much as she's obviously thinking about running for office one day, it's not, I should be able to look at her and say, when you reach the age of majority to be able to run for office, you should have just as much a chance of landing there as a man. But I absolutely cannot tell her that. I think that's really unfortunate. So only our women lawyer voices are going to change those numbers. Like I said, it's not enough for women just to be allowed in law school or allowed in law firms or allowed in corporate boardrooms or courtrooms or legislatures. We need to be there in numbers that represent our numbers in the population, and we need to be there in leadership positions. So why does it matter that women are equal in numbers in these rooms and that they are in leadership positions? Hopefully it's no surprise. If you change who's in the room, you change the conversation that goes on in that room. And that room could be a partners meeting where there's a discussion of what the firm's paternity leave policy should be or what flexible schedules should be available. If women are not in those rooms and aren't part of the leadership that's ultimately going to decide which policy to adopt, then most likely our needs are going to be left out. The room may be a meeting in Congress to debate and pass laws regarding equal pay, family leave, or child care policies. Again, if women are not in those rooms, most likely our needs and our voices are going to be left out of that discussion. And when conditions for women in the leadership profession improves, things tend to improve for all women. And then when things improve for women, they improve for families. We as women lawyers are uniquely situated to have a huge impact on our state and our country, not just our profession. Now, certainly not all women leaders are lawyers. You certainly don't have to be. I've worked with some amazing lawyers who never wanted to step foot in a law school. But all women lawyers are leaders. And that's because all lawyers are leaders. We help lead folks and help folks through their problems. We stand up and speak for folks when they can't speak for themselves. And lawyers are constantly sought after as good candidates for boards, both corporate and nonprofit, for leading community initiatives, and for running for office. Women lawyers are uniquely situated to step up into these leadership roles and are uniquely situated to make changes while in those leadership roles that are going to be significant not only to just other women lawyers, but to women as a whole and their families. We build on each other, and our personal experiences have a ripple effect through the profession and through society. If we stop, it's going to affect not just us and our families, but it's going to affect the progress that's possible down the road. Just think, and none of us in this room probably won't think about it, just think if Edith House had stopped, or if any of the other women who broke down barriers had stopped at just that point and said, good enough, I didn't get to go to law school before, now I can. No, they kept fighting. And Justice Carol Hunstein explains why it's important for us to keep going. She said, I don't think I would be where I am if it were not for a lot of women who had committed themselves to equality for women. I hope that I can reach out and help women today. I don't want women to get too comfortable with the opportunities that they have. There are still people who would like to have things back where they were before. So it's not going to be a good idea for any of us in this room to get comfortable. And I've been talking about women. Obviously, there's some really good men in this room. And we all need to work together for this. What I'm going to do, I wanted to share some thoughts on how to use your woman lawyer voice to do good for yourself and your profession, and in turn for our society as a whole. This list is certainly not exhaustive, and you may not agree with everything I say, and that's fine. Take from it what you will, but these are just my thoughts on how we should use our voices. First, use it. Simply that, use it. Men, and I'm not talking about the men in this room, but men, they talk all the time. And they don't apologize for it. Women, whenever we speak up, we say, well, I'm sorry, this may not be what you meant, or I'm sure you didn't mean it this way, or I'm sorry to interrupt. We need to just use our voice and speak loudly and clearly when we have something to say and not be worried that we may be offending someone. I mean, certainly you want to pick your battles, but generally speaking, we think too much in our head before we speak, and we end up not speaking. Now, you may say, I'm sure you've all been in these moments where you think, I really disagree with that, but I really don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into a debate right now. I think it's going to be a lot easier if I just keep my mouth shut. Women are much more likely to do that than men. But please don't. And certainly don't wait until conditions are perfect to speak out, because the moment may not come back again. And if you have a perspective that needs to be shared, and particularly a perspective that's unique, and you don't share it, you have absolutely no right to be upset when it's not considered, because you had your moment to say something and you didn't. So use your voice. Use it to take business risks. This is another thing that men are a lot better at than women, taking risks. And this is just, I'm going to give an example of a risk that I took, but certainly there are lots of contexts where this can play out. My first legislative session was 2011. That year was also my 8th year at the large law firm where I was working. It was mentioned in the bio, Powell Goldstein, and it had just become Bryan Cave. I worked a year under the new merged firm. I was on track to make partner. I was in a fairly good spot, I felt, at the firm. I was getting good work. It was challenging. It was interesting. Like I said, it was just my first legislative session, so I was a little bit nervous about the billing pressure while also serving in the legislature, but everything seemed to be working out okay. I had a lot of support within the firm. I didn't have any plans to leave. I was very comfortable there. I honestly thought I'd be there forever. But then everything changed pretty quickly. Andrew was out of town. He was out of the country, actually. Sort of called and said, got this opportunity. Tell me what you think about this. So one of the partners I worked with was an attorney named Len Wood, and he had a chance to take what was, for him, the case of a lifetime, and ended up being a case of a lifetime for a lot of us. It was a case representing 2 whistleblowers who alleged that one of the country's largest dialysis clinic chains was fraudulently billing Medicare for hundreds of millions of dollars of intentionally wasted dialysis medication. Conflicts being what they were, the case couldn't be brought to Bryan Cave, and so he made a decision rather quickly to leave, start his own law firm to take the case. And when I heard about that, I said, I think I want you to take me with you. I think I want to be a part of this. And in hindsight, and we started a law firm, by the way, after that in 2 weeks, literally. It was a very mind-blowing experience. And in hindsight, it looked like the obvious and right choice. Of course, it was a great case. It paid out. Everything was great. Now you have more time to be more involved in politics and more flexibility for family. It looks like that now. But on the flip side, at the time, I was making a really good salary at a really stable, big law firm. I had a predictable path to partnership and a steady salary for as long as I wanted. And instead, I jumped out, started a law firm, didn't get paid for a couple of years. It was one of those things Andrew and I used to joke about. We said, this is either going to work out really well or we're going to be bankrupt. Ha, ha, ha. It was funny, but at the time, so it worked out. But that was a huge risk to leave the firm. And I really hope that you won't shy away from those opportunities to take a business or financial risk. And I'm certainly not suggesting that you go play the slots or throw all caution to the wind, but just seriously consider smart, calculated business risks, which could come in various forms. It could be taking a lower paying job in the beginning to get good experience that's going to translate to a more prestigious position or even a higher paying position down the road. It could be venturing out to start your own law firm like I did. It could be just simply showing boldness, which is not so simply, but showing boldness within your firm by volunteering for or asking for more responsibilities on the cases that you're working on. Ask to draft those big briefs. Ask to handle oral arguments. And even if you're told no, you're going to be planting the seed that you're ready. You're going to be planting that seed in your partner's mind that you're ready for that, and the chance for you to take those opportunities is probably going to be offered to you a lot sooner because, like I said, you're planting the seeds. And certainly if you're given the chance to take on a challenge, if someone sees in you that you're ready, even if you don't see it in yourself yet, jump. Give it a shot. That happened to me when I was a fifth-year associate. I was working with a female partner at the time, Karen Wildow. She was one of the first 2 female partners at the firm I was working with. I was deathly terrified of her. Everyone in the firm was, which that turned out to be a lot more about what usually gets said about women than what was true about her. But anyway, when I was a fifth year, we had a case that was going to be going up to the Delaware Chancery Court, and she asked me if I wanted to handle the oral argument for our motion to dismiss. And I really didn't want to. I was really afraid. I didn't think I was ready. But for whatever reason, I said yes anyway. And it ended up being an amazing experience. I got to not only argue that at Delaware Chancery Court, but the case, we won at the Chancery Court level, and it got appealed to the Supreme Court of Delaware, where I got to argue, and then they called us back for an en banc argument where I lost. We talked about this at lunch. It wasn't my fault. There was a judge who had something in his mind that he wanted to do, and apparently this case gave him a chance to do it. So he reversed it on a point that wasn't even argued in any of the briefings or any of the earlier arguments. So in any event, I did that, and it let other partners know other partners that I was working for, that I was ready to do that. And so as a result, I ended up getting to take on a lot of other big responsibility in other cases I was working for. So just take those risks when they come to you, seek them out. I think, again, men are much more likely to take those risks or to think that they're ready and to ask for opportunities, and so they get them. And we really shouldn't let men have all the fun, certainly not all the financial reward, because there's plenty to go around. Number 3, use your voice to stay the course and do what's hard. Now, a couple of months before the opportunity came to leave big firm life for small firm ownership, Andrew and I had decided that after 7 years of life as dinks, just double income, no kids, which is nice. So after 7 years of that, we had decided that we were ready to start a family. And let me emphasize again that we made this decision before life changed, when that decision was made. And then a few short months after starting the new firm, I found out that I was pregnant. And I don't know that I mentioned in here that Andrew had also just started his own law firm. So there's a lot going on. I was also still in the legislature, needing to spend the better part of the first 3 months of the year under the Gold Dome, not to mention the constituent meetings and other things that go along with being elected. So it was still early enough, like I said, this was only a couple months in to the new firm, still early enough that I could have reversed course, stepped back, said this is just not the time for me to be taking this kind of risk or to take on this work that I couldn't have even comprehended truly at the time what we were taking on. But it would have been easy to step back at that point. But I didn't. We didn't. We just dug in and we made it work. And it certainly wasn't easy, I'm not going to lie to you. And it wasn't pretty either. There were plenty of times, and I say this, what I'm about to say, because you're going to be in these situations where you're going to think it's too hard and you're going to want to quit. And it's okay to feel that way. Just don't do it. And like when I'm talking about this not being pretty, it was really hard. There were times where I wanted to quit. I think there was a time I did quit for 24 hours and then came to my senses. But it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be overwhelmed. But just remember, this too shall pass, and just dig in and make sure that you stay the course, because I'm pretty sure that the best opportunities that we all have are not going to pick the time that's most convenient for us to come along, and we've kind of just got to seize it when it comes. The bottom line is you just do what you got to do. And stress and tough times are all relative. And it's important to keep perspective when you think that the path in front of you is too hard. I remember talking to my doctor when I was pregnant during this time and expressing concern that I was stressed and is this going to be dangerous for the baby? And looking back on that conversation, luckily she didn't say this, but the doctor really should have said, "Oh, honey, bless your silly little privileged lawyer lady heart. This is, was I stressed? Of course I was. But it was nothing compared to what a lot of women go through, and particularly poor women who've never had a chance to be in a room like we're in today go through. And that's basically what she told me in a very nice way. She said, listen, everybody's got stress. There's financial stress of whether you're going to be able to pay the bills, whether the water's going to be turned off, whether you're going to lose your house, whether your spouse loses his job, are you in an abusive relationship? I mean, there's plenty of things that women deal with that are a lot tougher than the stress of being a lawyer. I also remember my insurance company. For those of you in the room that have been pregnant, you may remember that the insurance company calls you to evaluate, I guess, what a health risk you're going to be during your pregnancy, and they ask questions designed to evaluate your stress level. And they didn't ask me what time did I wake up, how many briefs did I have to write in a month, any of those kind of things, what did I do for a living. They asked me if I did drugs. They asked me if I was in an abusive relationship. They asked me if I was sick, like did I have cancer? Big problems, not just stress of writing briefs. So I was a little bit disgusted with myself for a moment. And the truth was I knew better. I'd grown up poor. I was raised by a mom who had me when she was 17, never graduated from high school, bounced around in abusive relationships. And I knew what it was like to come home and not have electricity or not have a phone. And I saw my mom struggle with those stresses all throughout my childhood. And so taking stock, my work stress problems were a lot smaller, and I should have known better. And like I said, I'm not saying that it's not normal and not that it's not okay for you to feel stress at times, but just remember, it's all relative, and there are folks that are suffering a lot more than you are. And the beauty of making this comparison is that we as women lawyers, if we dig in and do what's hard and stay the course, we actually have a chance to help change the life for those very women that I'm talking about that are struggling day to day with some really hard problems. And instead of letting the stress of pushing forward stop us, we can keep going and make some far-reaching and really monumental change. There's a lot at stake. Number 4, use your woman lawyer voice to do what you want to do and not just what you're asked to do. That's really hard because women, we're pleasers, really are. But one of the reasons that women fall behind a lot on partnership track is that they're asked to handle a lot of non-billable work at law firms. Things such as recruiting, mentoring, pro bono work all take up enormous amounts of time. And if you want to do these things, that's fine. And you need to be a good firm citizen and do your part. But when you get out into law firm life, if you find yourself always being asked to handle the non-billable work when you would rather not, suggest that maybe it be split between you and a male colleague. When I was at Powell Goldstein, I remember there were 2 young partners there named Jen, both awesome, top-notch attorneys that taught me a lot. And they were also organizational wizards, which women tend to be more than men. But it was a common phrase at the firm for the older male partners to talk about what mentoring work needed to be done, what recruitment tasks there were to be done, and just say, we'll get the Jens to do it. We'll get the Jens to do it. And I just hope that we'll all do our part to make sure that those kind of tasks get spread around to the Jasons of the world too, and not just the Jens. Number 5, use your woman lawyer voice to network. Networking is a part of our profession, like it or not. Marketing is no longer a dirty word. It really hasn't been for a long time. It's an essential part of law firm life. It's certainly not enough for you to be smart and work hard. Everyone in this room is. Everyone in your law school class is. You're going to have to work and keep clients. And you're going to be more likely to get clients if you go out and socialize with people. And you're less likely to socialize with people if you're always in the office. Men understand this, so make time for it. It may seem like the more you work, the more you'll get ahead, but this is a huge part of getting ahead. So make time for it, particularly before you decide to start your family, because it's always going to be important, but it's going to be a lot harder to do it once you have more pressures at home. So make it a habit as early as you can. Number 6, use your voice to hear and understand voices that are different from yours. When you go to a luncheon or any other kind of event, make your time count. It's human nature to seek out those that you know or those that look like you and talk to them because it's more comfortable. But don't do that. Instead, look for people that you don't know and that don't look like you. Sit with them, talk with them, get to know them. It's going to help broaden not only your world, but also it's giving you a chance to enlighten them because maybe they would have never reached out to meet somebody that looked different from them and talk to them, and maybe they'll even hear a perspective that they might not have otherwise heard. Number 7, use your voice to encourage others. One of my favorite things to do at the Capitol is to speak to groups of girls or young women who come. And I'm always jolted, even though I shouldn't be because it happens so much. But I'm treated as this unicorn. Oh, a woman legislator, we're so happy to see you in the flesh and talk to you about what it's like. But it's wonderful for me, just because I love to see little kids, but it's also, I love to do it because I hope that it broadens their world and gives them a chance to see something that they want to be, because it's really hard to dream something that you've never seen before. And so that's important. And I hope that you'll do the same thing. I mean, you are role models, the law school students, simply by being in this room. And I hope that you never pass up a chance to talk to younger groups of girls, whether that's in a school or Girl Scouts or any other type of organization, because they really do look up to you. And use your voice not just to encourage those that are younger than you, but to encourage each other. Maybe you pick a buddy and you make a pact that you're always going to encourage each other to stay the course and make partner at a law firm or start your own firm. We have to be cheerleaders for each other and not just easy shoulders to lean on to hear it's okay to quit. Sure, like I said earlier, sometimes it is. Sometimes you're going to get in over your head or it's not going to be the right time for you to jump, but we need to encourage each other to push, to keep going, to stay the course. And please, and this applies to a lot of us, let's start encouraging each other to stop worrying so much about the word balance. It's stressing us out unnecessarily. This is how I like to think about balance. Think about it over time and not just a snapshot. And what I mean by that is you're going to have days where you're going to work late and you might not leave your office that day to work out or even to eat. But that's okay, it happens. Think about balancing out your life over a week or over a month or sometimes even over a year or the course of a case, 4 years, you got to do what you got to do. But just don't let balance stress you out. Life is not going to fit neatly into a box, into little boxes, and sometimes you're going to have to multitask. And you know this from school. I mean, how often do you go out and see friends or work out during finals week? You've got to dig in and get it done. So that applies all throughout life. Balance is a long-term game. Number 8, don't shy away from using your voice to discuss controversial topics. In the middle of my second legislative session, which was 2012, that was the year that my daughter was born, we had scheduled an inducement. So I knew when I was going to give birth, which was a little weird. So I knew that we were going to the hospital on February 28th, and Ashley was to be born on February 29th. It was leap year, which is pretty neat. So she had her very first real birthday this year. So that session, there was a bill that had been percolating that was going to limit the time period for abortions in Georgia to 20 weeks. So we didn't know when it was going to come up. On February 28th, it was announced that the bill was going to be debated the next day, on the 29th. So I was really down about that. I was the only person pregnant in the legislature at the time. That's not a shock. And all the worries of pregnancy were still right there, and I really felt that I had a unique voice to share. And certainly, this is my controversial topic, and your controversial topic may be speaking on the other side of this. I just want to use this as an example. I remembered during my pregnancy that at about 20 weeks is when doctors tested for fetal anomalies. So I knew that if this bill passed and a woman took her tests in the due course and found out there was a problem, for example, her baby was going to die in the womb before birth or maybe wasn't going to make it outside the hospital stay, that woman would not be able to obtain an abortion in Georgia because she wouldn't know the results in time to make that decision before 20 weeks. So I was really upset that I wasn't going to be able to go and share this perspective that I felt that I knew was really unique at the time. There was certainly no dispute that I had an excused absence from the vote. Pretty sure giving birth is an excuse, and had every excuse not to speak. But I really wanted to, and I had lunch, fortunately, that day with a female lobbyist who had an idea that I should record a statement and have another legislator play it during her remarks. So I recorded a message literally a couple of hours before we checked into the hospital. And to the credit of the Speaker of the House, who's not pro-choice, he allowed my video to be played as its own speech on the floor, which was the first time that a legislator had spoken on a bill from outside the chamber. I just felt that it was important for my voice to be heard, even though I didn't have an invitation to speak and even though I had every excuse not to, and it was very controversial. I did it anyway. And so I want to share part of that video message because I think it's a good example of having a unique perspective to share. And I hope that it sort of drives home the point of what I'm saying, is that if you've got something important and unique to say, I hope that you'll say it. And I've got to walk over here. And for those of you that didn't know this, Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or afternoon. I'm not really sure which it is yet. As most of y'all know, I'm not there in person today. I am actually down the street at Emory Midtown University Hospital, or Crawford Long, as many of y'all know it, having a baby, or maybe I've even already had a baby. Y'all should know by now, hopefully. Hopefully I know. And I hate that I can't be there with you in person, but I didn't want to be left out of this discussion, because I think it's a really important discussion that we're having here today. And I thought, given that I am literally delivering a baby today, I am someone who is very familiar with some of the steps that are being discussed today, and somebody who's gone through all that process very recently. And I know there's been a lot of talk about when tests for fetal anomalies can take place and when they do take place. And I just wanted to tell you my experience. I had many of the tests to test for fetal anomalies around 20 to 21 weeks. And when you have those tests, you go into your doctor's office and you have your test. You have blood work done, give samples, all sorts of all sorts of things, and then those samples are taken and tested, and then they come back to you, and that alone takes time. It was usually about a week before I would find out how those initial tests went, but that wasn't the end. Fortunately for me and my husband, everything came back from those initial tests normal, and we didn't need to go any further. But if those levels had tested, if my levels had tested abnormally, there would have been another test, and then there would have been another waiting period. So for me, when I started, let's say even the earliest test that I took, starting at 20 weeks, we're not talking about a decision. We're not talking about me having the results immediately. We're not even talking about me having the results a week later. We're talking about most likely 2 or maybe even 3 weeks later. And again, very fortunately, my husband and I didn't have anything come back abnormal. We didn't have to make a difficult decision about what to do if we were faced with knowing that our child might not make it very long outside of the womb, or would have a very challenging life with complications that I don't even want to imagine right now. We didn't have to make those choices, but so many women do. And that is their choice. That is their choice with their husband and their God and their doctor. And I can't imagine being those women and having gone through the process and followed my doctor's advice and taken the tests when I was told to take the tests, and then being told that being able to make a decision based on those tests was ripped away from me by this General Assembly. And not only that decision was ripped away from me, but then that I would be forced to carry a child to term that I knew was not going to be able to live outside the womb. And having been here in this house for the last several weeks has been pretty amazing for me. Y'all have been, the family atmosphere that exists under the dome has really come to light. Every day, you come by my desk and you ask me, how are you doing? How is the baby? How's the nursery coming along? Is it a girl? Is it a boy? I can't even, and you can tell I'm tearing up a little bit here, I can't even imagine having to answer those questions, knowing that I was carrying a child that may not live outside of my hospital stay. And as much as I know that y'all care about me and care about the women of Georgia, the decision about what to do if I were faced with that terrible situation would be mine. Again, it would be mine, my husband's, my God's, and my doctor's. And as much as you care about me, you would not be in that doctor's office with me when I was faced with that very difficult situation. And none of us in here are going to be with the millions of women, hundreds, thousands, however many there are, that would be faced with these difficult decisions. As much as I know you care about Georgia, I do too. Those are the decisions for our daughters, for our sisters, for our aunts, for our friends. They're not ours. Trust the women of Georgia. These are incredibly difficult decisions that I'm so thankful. So, despite my passionate plea, the bill passed. It is currently enjoined. There are some legal challenges to similar laws in other states, so that's working its way through the system. But again, unique perspective, controversial, but no need to shy away from that. It's very important. I came back to the legislature a week after I had Ashley, which is, Hannah mentioned that I was named Superwoman, so that's why I got that, was coming back a week later, which I was kind of hoping I was going to get a cape, but I didn't. And I really didn't think I was Superwoman. I was just doing my job. Votes were still being cast, and everything was healthy with me and with the baby, and had a very supportive cast of characters to help me, and so I came back. But when they named me Superwoman, this was the picture they used. And I just think that's so menacing. I have any, I look very mean in that picture. And you never know when they're taking pictures of you on the floor. It's kind of crazy. But I wanted to show this because this was the last day of session in 2012. And this was all the women of the House. We had wrapped ourselves in caution tape. And this was in protest of that same bill. It was still being debated because some changes had been made in the Senate. And so it came back to us for final action. So this was during the vote. And we joined with the women in the Senate, and we marched around the top of the Capitol screaming, "Women will remember in November." And so it was this is definitely probably one of the most controversial things I've taken place in personally. I've never really thought of myself as a protester type. But we definitely did that here. And I wanted to show it again because I don't want you to shy away from controversial topics. I'm very proud and glad that I've been able to build up a reputation to be someone who's able to work across the aisle and compromise and get things done. And I would certainly be lying if I told you that I didn't sometimes fear losing that reputation by speaking out on controversial topics like this. But I always try to remind myself of the advice that I'm giving you here today, that certain things are worth speaking out on and taking a chance. And there are going to be times when you're going to be tempted to shy away from speaking out, whether it's a topic like this or something else. You might not want to make hay on an issue because somebody might call you a feminist. And you may fear that you may have some male colleagues or fellow students that might not want to work with you if they think of you this way. And I think you need to choose your battles. Certainly, you can't fight every war, but don't shy away from all of them, particularly when you have something unique to share. Because again, if you don't share that perspective and it's unique, you can't be mad when it's not considered. So even if you lose, like I did here. But despite speaking out and participating in our little female protest, which got national news, you can look it up. There's videos of us marching around the Capitol, which was pretty wild, wrapped in caution tape. So I think I kept some of that because it was so memorable. But I've still been able to work across the aisle and get things done with a majority male and a majority Republican legislature. These next pictures just to prove it. So the picture on the left is me with the leaders, the Speaker of the House, the governor, the lieutenant governor, where the governor was announcing support for a bill that I had introduced to expand access to technical college education. And then the picture on the right is when the governor signed the bill. And we did one more bill the next year, another bill that I introduced to further expand access. So you can be controversial and be compromising and work with folks. And you can also be the mom who brings your daughter to work. So that picture on the left is Ashley's first visit to the Capitol in 2012, and then this was just a couple of weeks ago where she's voting my machine, so don't tell anybody, but she was pushing. And she was really funny. Andrew was there, and he'll remember. They happened to be there at a time when we were doing all the bills that we all saw eye to eye on, so there was a bunch of yes votes. And she kept asking me when we were going to get to vote no. She really was enthusiastic to press the no button. But so you can be all that. You can show all parts of your personality, and you can also be the woman who's standing up here using every opportunity to show you her daughter. That's totally fine. So number 9, this is the last one. Use your voice to lead, and don't wait for an invitation to do it. While we can all individually do things in the workplace and to help the cause, it isn't just about what we do. It's about changing the laws and changing societal norms. There was an ABA report on the status of women from 1980 that was actually signed by Hillary Clinton That report concluded that the passage of time and the increase of women in the field would not erase the barriers to practice or solve problems that female lawyers face. It's not enough about what we do. We've got to change the norms and we've got to change the law. That study and that conclusion is no less relevant today than it was in 1980, and that was 36 years ago. The numbers that I showed earlier about our problems within the workplace, within society, within government, within the judiciary, demonstrate that while we're gaining numbers in law school and entering the profession, we aren't staying and we aren't advancing like we need to. We can help those numbers by ourselves, like I said, taking individual risks and staying the course, but by and large, to get wholesale change, we're going to have to change policy. So how are we going to do that? By making our voices heard at the ballot box and on the campaign stump. In other words, use your woman lawyer voice to vote, support other women who are running for office, and run for office yourself. I don't care if it's as a Republican or a Democrat, just run. And please, don't wait for an invitation to run for office. If that's something you want to do, or there's another type of leadership role that you want to take, seek it out. When I chaired Georgia's Win List, working with Professor Love, the thing that I learned was that the number one reason that women don't run for office is because they're never asked. They don't think they're qualified. They think that they need to be told by someone else that they're qualified. They don't think about it. They need to have that invitation. Now, men wake up every morning thinking that they're ready to be president. Women are very different from that. So don't let that be your excuse that you weren't asked. But just in case, I want to look particularly right here. I'm asking you all to think about it. If women don't start running in large numbers, then we can't win in large numbers, and our elected officials are going to continue to look like what they look like now, by and large. And that is stale, pale, and male. Only we get to try to change that. And now I'm going to be honest. There's never going to be a good time to run for office. You're always going to be in the middle of doing something else. You're going to be getting ready to have a family. You're going to already have a family. You're going to be making a career change. You're going to be working to be partner. You're going to be running carpool. You're going to be doing all kinds of things. But if you want to run for office, my advice is that you're just going to have to make time and do it. And now that isn't to say that you shouldn't be strategic about when you run from a political standpoint, and I'm happy to help you with that if ever you want to make that decision. You need to know the numbers where you're thinking about running. You need to know the situation with the incumbent. You need to make a very informed political decision. And please, don't move to Smyrna and run against me. But those caveats aside, if you want to run, you should run. We absolutely need you, like I told you. And the chamber I serve in, 26% women. And the chamber across the hall, 16% women. There's a lot of room for growth there. When I started my campaign for the State House, it was in 2009. Then State Representative Rob Tilley, who's also a double dog graduate of this law school, announced that he was going to run for higher office. And so his seat was an open seat, which is a great opportunity politically. Those don't come open very often. But I was only 31 years old, busy working at my law firm, very happy, very busy, involved in all kinds of boards that I would have to resign from if I decided to run for office. And it certainly would have been easy to say, it's not the time, I'm too young, too busy. But like I said, open seats don't come open all that often. And so whether I liked it or not, the time was then. So like I said, we can individually work to make changes by ourselves, pushing through challenges and taking risks and sacrificing some short-term balance. But the issues that keep our numbers from rising are more systemic than what any of us can do individually. We've got to get in there and change policy. Child care policy, paid leave, societal issues, and ideas of child rearing are all things that get fixed at a bigger level. And the only way that we change that is getting into those positions to make the policy. We need to vote more. There's never an excuse not to vote. There really isn't. And we have to support other women that are running for office and run ourselves. So in closing, women lawyer voices have gotten us where we are today. And for that reason alone, our voices are very important and their voices are very important. But the woman lawyer voice is also important because the woman lawyer voice helps not just women lawyers, but all women and in turn all families. We are so fortunate to get to stand on the shoulders of female legal giants like Edith House. And truly great progress has been made. But just as our foremothers didn't rest when they got the right to vote, thinking, at least we're not property anymore. And women didn't just settle for being able to go to law school. and then sit in the typing pool. They demanded that they get their place as litigators and prosecutors and public defenders and judges and congresswomen and governors. But now we have to grow those numbers and step into more leadership roles and stay the course. And we must keep going and use our women lawyer voices to make more progress for ourselves and our daughters and our granddaughters, and again, for society. And what could our excuse possibly be for not continuing to push for that progress? Many women before us stood up alone, literally all alone, and they did things that no one had ever dreamed possible. They had no one to look at for a role model for what they did, but they did it anyway. We, on the other hand, we get to stand up together, locked arms, following paths that have been blazed for us, and do it in numbers. That's a lot easier. We really have no excuses. And so let's speak loudly with our women lawyer voices. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Evans. I feel so inspired right now, and I know that probably everyone else in the room feels inspired in some way by your speech. It was everything we could have wanted and more from an Edith House lecturer, and once again, thank you so much for coming. We'd like to invite you to a reception at the bottom of these stairs, but very quickly first, we have another WULSA executive member, Ms. Meredith Gardial, who's very involved in the CEASE Clinic and has one really quick announcement about an event that's happening, and then we can go and chat, and Ms. Evans would be happy to take any of the questions that you have.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Ms. Evans. It was truly a really inspirational speech, and we're so honored to have you here today. Speaking of using our women's voices for change, we have an opportunity to do that today at 5 p.m. The Wilbank CEASE Clinic is going to do a screening of a documentary called The Pursuit of Justice, and it is about helping survivors of child sexual abuse find their voice and find justice within our legal system. It's particularly germane for this lecture because, as you all may or may not know, statistically, women and young girls are much more likely to be victims of sexual assault. The filmmakers are going to be here today, and they're going to have a Q&A session afterward, and so I just wanted to use this opportunity to invite you all to come. There will be food and drink, and so this will, and it is going to be here it's in the Rusk Center. I apologize. That is where that will take place. So I won't stand between you all and the reception. And thank you all, and let's have another round of applause for Ms. Evans.